In this video, we're talking about the list of PSPortal problems and why they don't actually matter, Apple's latest team up with Sony, and a tiny PS5 update.
Snake, are you okay? Snake?
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to PSReady. This is the weekend video, so you know my boy Ray Trevino is here, ready to talk some PlayStation news. We just did the Xbox video, we're fired up. My kitchen's almost done. I've got the Gamer Edition Mountain Dew. Life is good over here. I also got the limited Steam Deck. Yeah, cracking a cold Mountain Dew.
You buried the lead on that one. You got the freaking limited edition Steam Deck.
It was a nightmare, Ray. It was terrible. Bad system. I saw that they just released more limited ones, though, so it seems like people are getting them, which is great. The first thing I want to talk about today is, did you watch the trailer for Madam Web?
Yeah, and because I saw some images floating around, and I was like, huh, what's this about? And then that led me to watch the trailer. Yeah.
It looks like a CW show.
It does, but I mean, I'm gonna watch it.
But the real image that I want to talk about is the guy holding a PSP on a bus. I didn't know that this movie took place in the early 2000s, and I was like, what? How could Sony dog the PS Vita like this, or even the PSPortal? But then I realized it takes place back in time, because this is the way they're going to slightly introduce the Peter Parker from the Venom, Morbius, Craven, whatever universe into this universe. And a lot of people are kind of bummed because it was supposed to be Andrew Garfield, but he already had his parents shown in Amazing Spider-Man 2, so it can't be him.
Yeah, that plot line that never went anywhere. The plot line that never was like, oh, they sacrificed themselves nobly for this experiment.
So I just thought it was funny that the guy was using a PSP. I was like, man, Sony can't even point out their new console, their new handheld. But yeah, it's because it takes place in the early 2000s.
I love
it's just
to see,
a funny image.
I love to see it, man. This was the life, like just PSP in hand, tracksuit on, white tee, like
God of War Chains of Olympus.
God of War Chains of Olympus, that's right. I played Metal Gear Solid Portable Ops on that, and a lot of NBA 2007 Live.
Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, my favorite Metal Gear, is on PSP, so yeah, good history with that console. But looks like the PSPortal, it's out now, by the way. It's off to a little bit of a rocky start. So Sony put out all these news stories, right? They were like, wow, this thing's selling like crazy. Wow. It's sold out everywhere. It turns out it's because it's a similar situation to the launch PS5. They made like 16 of them, so of course they sold out. And now people can't get them anywhere, so they're showing up on eBay, and people are not buying them for $300, thank God. But kind of a rocky start. They were just setting it up, right? For a little bit of a...
Was that intentional? They're like trying to like inflate demand for it, or like create the illusion of demand so people might go and buy it?
That's what they're saying. So there was an interview with the senior vice president of senior vice president of platform experience, and his name is Hideaki Nishin, and he said, rather than profitability, we want to increase the amount of time we can play with the PS5. If you can play anywhere, I think some people will definitely spend more time playing games. So this device is trying to keep you from using your Nintendo Switch, your Steam Deck, your Xbox Series X, your gaming PC, and wants to make sure that at all times, if you want to play PS5, you can play PS5.
It's not, there's an asterisk to that, right? Because you can't really play anywhere. You need to be in proximity of your PlayStation 5 console anyway.
Right. So IGN pointed this out, and I didn't even think of this, but this is a major oversight. They took it to, like, I think it was Dunkin' Donuts, but if you take it to Starbucks or McDonald's or whatever, and you'll quickly realize you can't use it because it needs a web browser to open up that screen where you click the checkbox to agree to the terms of service to use that public Wi-Fi, and it doesn't have any form of web browser at all, so you're really limited to like 5G tethering, or if you just miraculously find a Wi-Fi network that doesn't ask you to authenticate before you sign into it.
And which is funny because like we were just talking about the PSP that had a web browser way back in those early 2000s days, and you would think it's something that they could easily slot into their newest tech, especially when it's dependent on actually using it, right? In the way that they advertise.
Yeah, they've always been scared of people being able to access the back end of the PlayStation Network because
Because they get hacked all the time.
I guess it's super easy to hack. Yeah, they get hacked all the time. Like on the Vita, you can actually hack it and access a version of the PlayStation Store that'll make every game free. So that's not great. But then there's other issues, like where if you're playing a game like Horizon Forbidden West or Ratchet and Clank at 120 hertz, 40 FPS, if you don't switch it out of that mode, your PS5 will stay in 120 hertz mode when it turns on, and it'll stream the game to your portal at 40 hertz or 40 FPS, and it won't look very good because the screen on the portal runs at 60 hertz and 40 doesn't divide into 60 very well, so you'll get bad frame pacing. Also, if you're running a game at like 4K 60 on your TV, it'll beam a 4K 60 image to the device, which is pointless. It doesn't downsample it to 1080p. But the crazy thing is, if you use the PS Remote Play app on your phone or your iPad, or you use like Chiaki or I think PS Play, it'll downsample the incoming image for you. But this first-party device from Sony doesn't. And I've seen this on Beat 'em Up's Twitter. He put out a tweet that was like, whoa, this thing is sick. I'm playing this game with no latency, no artifacting, no anything. And then an hour later, the exact same spot and the exact same network, it's a completely different experience where it doesn't work correctly at all.
I follow this guy on Instagram, and he posted his PlayStation Portal, and everyone was like, whoa, looks sick. What do you think of it? And his first comment that he replied with was, honestly, it's just like a controller with a screen in the middle. Honestly, kind of trash, but like it makes for good pictures. And I will agree with that, because listen, the design of this thing is dope. Like the DualSense handles, and then like the way that they're not entirely connected to the screen, almost kind of like just the top versions of it. Like the design, it looks cool. Like this thing looks cool. It's just there's so many features missing that make me. I'm like, why would I personally want this to pair with my PS5? I just don't. I don't have a need for it, so it's just not. I don't know. Like who is this made for? Is the question that I have when they announced it, like, and then
like, it works well for an extremely niche audience. So like if you want it, it's cool. But the biggest problem with it is that you have already, like guaranteed, if you're watching this video, you have a PS5 even, you have many devices that can just do what this does. You can use a backbone controller, you can use a DualSense on your phone, you can use a DualSense on your laptop, you can do so many different things that will arguably give you a better experience.
I mean, yeah, with the PS app, like you could just clip your phone with many other third-party clips out there to a DualSense controller and yeah, do the same thing. I don't know, other than if you wanted a bigger screen, like a dedicated one or something.
Like the screen itself does look good. I wish it was OLED for what it is. Like that would go a long way. But of course they want to keep the price at $200, which for what it does, again, is massively overpriced. So they're not going to put OLED in. They're not going to put a web browser. They're not going to have it run Android or anything. You know, like the G Cloud, where they ran into the same issue, where it's like they do put all that stuff in, and then they have to charge $350 for it or take a massive loss. My first world fix for this problem is I have a PS5 in my basement, and then I have one in my living room, and it's awesome.
Hell yeah. Yeah, just sell out that extra $500 and you could live like Jim with your Mountain Dew and your Steam Deck.
And you can get a free copy of Modern Warfare 3 even. Wow.
Oh,
that's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yep. All the people asking for the code, I used it. So sorry, I'm not giving that away.
I want this trend to be left behind. Like Sony's not the only one putting out products like this. So I'm not gonna say like, oh, why are they doing this? Like this is something that we've been seeing for the past couple of years, like dedicated streaming accessories. And every time, like I feel like they just don't do very well. Like there's a lot of hype out around them leading up to their launch, and then their launch, like Logitech put out one. Logitech put out the G Cloud. Razer put out their version of one. Sony's putting out their version of one. I just want this trend to go away, because I feel like that's not what people are asking for. These companies just picked up on like, oh, like the cloud and streaming, that's where the future is. And it's like people are approving these products who just are kind of seeing these buzzwords, thinking that they're gonna be popular, but it's not lining up with what gamers actually want.
Right, because I would really like a Steam Deck style device from Sony. I get why they're nervous, and also Valve was saying that to dramatically increase performance but keep the battery life where it is, which is like 3 to 12 hours depending on what you're doing, they'd have to wait like 2 years because the technology doesn't exist. So maybe Sony doesn't have the ability to make that handheld now, but like towards the end of the generation, the third trimester of the generation, I don't know what to call it, they could maybe make like a PSP2 or something, because if they could keep this look and feel, I feel like a lot of people would be interested in it, right? Like it looks awesome having the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, but the fact that you can't even have Android on it and emulate games with it, that really takes away from a lot of like even the niche of the niche community. We're moving on from the PS Portal. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the tiniest, minuscule, smallest PS5 update we've ever gotten. And a lot of people were like, what does this update add? What could it do to change my PS5 forever? And it turns out
celestial
Sony's
change.
testing out their version of the greatest review tool of all time, Steam Reviews. Steam Reviews are an excellent platform because PC gamers, we know what's going on, and largely if a game has a massive performance issue that's like tied to the game, you will see it reflected in the Steam reviews. And Steam makes you buy a game before you can rate it and review it, which I think is good because then you're getting an honest take. So Sony, they're dipping their toe in the water here, and they've implemented a system where if you buy a PS5 game, you can now rate it out of 5 stars, and that rating will show on the PlayStation Store on your PS5.
We know that there is a problem with, paid reviews and people flooding them just to, either tank the rating or boost the rating. Here's something, since you're bringing up Steam, that I feel like every review site should have. You know how Steam has, it'll show you, like whoever's writing the review, no matter who they are, how much time they have played that game that they're talking about. So if I'm reading a review and it says like this dude has played 5,000 hours of this game, I'm gonna believe what he said, like even if it's bad, because he has played 5,000 hours of that game. And I want to see that specific feature make its way over to the PlayStation Store and the Microsoft Store, because that is an indicator of whether I should take this seriously or not. Like, dude, this guy spent like years worth of time in this game. He probably knows what he's talking about. But this is definitely a great first step, for sure. Yeah,
I really wish they would come up with some way like what you're talking about, where you could see just very front and center how many hours of a game someone's played when they're sharing their opinion on it. Because there's a lot of people who played like an hour of Hogwarts Legacy, right? And they're like, game's trash, sucks ass, not good. But then you find people who actually like completed it, and they're like, yeah, it's not moving the needle in terms of like gameplay advancement, but like living in the world of the movie, being very accurate to what you've seen in the movies and the books and everything. It does a great job at that. And it takes a little while to get there with the combat, but it ultimately ends up good. And those reviews kind of get pushed down by the people who like buy it for $20 on Green Man Gaming or G2A just so they can say that they have it and leave a trash review, right? Like, you would cut down on so much of that bullshit that you have to deal with when you're talking about Metacritic scores and user gamer reviews and stuff like that.
It's for like those middle of the road guys, like you have it's the same thing with like people playing Spider-Man for 30 minutes being like, this is the greatest game of all time. You know what I mean? If you're like, okay, well, like, I get it. You really love Spider-Man and you really love these games. But what about for the guy who is just like, casually plays like Madden and Call of Duty? Like, what about that guy? Like, what if he's not on that level?
So that pretty much covers it. That's the secret mini update that you got on your PlayStation 5. Now you know what it does. The third thing I want to talk about is this partnership little dance that Apple and Sony have been messing around with for a while. So a couple times over the past year, you've been able to get like a pretty healthy amount of time of free Apple TV Plus subscription service, and it was very generous. Like, I think it was something like 6 months, and all you had to do was not ever be a subscriber and have a PlayStation 5, and then you would get that. So now they're coming back and giving 6 months of Apple Music away. Unfortunately, you have to be a new subscriber, so you can't just get 6 months free if you've never used it. But the interesting thing is, if you've had it before, you can still reactivate your subscription. You'll just get a little less time. And it's kind of interesting to see Sony continually teaming up with Apple, because last week you were kind of talking about it, where Sony, we both kind of feel like Sony's trying to become a boutique like Apple style brand where they can charge way more for their products and get away with it. They can release things like the PlayStation Portal. They can do the DualSense Edge and 50 other colors of the DualSense, and everything's cool. They can do $200 gaming earbuds and the Elite Series headphones. You know, it's like you could kind of see the trajectory they want to be on here.
They got a lot of cushion, I will say. They got a lot of cushion, you know. Even if the PlayStation Portal doesn't sell well, it's not going to kill them. I mean, they'll still be... They're going to reach probably 50 million units sold in the next couple of months for PS5s. And it's crazy, but... yeah, you start to see like, oh, the PlayStation technology hardware ecosystem. And yeah, it's very similar, I would say, to what Apple is doing with their stuff. It's like, oh, you got the iPhone, but you also got to get the AirPods. You also got to get the magnetic case, and that can wirelessly charge it and things like that. And from what I see with Sony, even like in terms of their presentation and their branding, you see a lot of similarities. At least I think so. So yeah, the partnership is interesting. I will say that, you know, Apple Music on consoles is a cool thing to have. It came to Xbox a while ago. I don't personally use it. I still use Spotify, but it's always nice seeing, you know, different app options available to console users, no matter what platform you're on.